recession is coming.
Millions of people will lose their jobs, and there's nothing you can do about it. Well, actually, there's plenty you can do about it. And today I'm going to show you 4 steps you can take to prepare for an oncoming recession. It's easy to feel helpless with all the doom and gloom and talk about an oncoming recession, but you are still in control of your finances and your life. No one can predict with 100% certainty that a recession is gonna happen, but it's good to prepare and not let a recession take you off guard. The first thing you can do to prepare for a recession is to evaluate your financial risk. Evaluate your risk. Not everyone is at risk for being impacted for an oncoming recession. And while no job is 100% recession proof, there are some jobs that are more recession proof than others. For example, any career in the medical field such as doctors or nurses, public service jobs such as police officers, firefighters, and medics, or teaching jobs. These jobs are considered recession proof because people will always need things like medical care or help during an emergency or people to help teach their kids. And on the flip side, there are jobs that are more susceptible to recession, such as tech and construction jobs. For example, tech jobs that are not highly specialized, especially in operations, are sometimes the first to get cut because they are needed more when the companies are growing. Jobs like customer service and operation support, when the company is shrinking, it's hard to justify not cutting those jobs. But these are just a few examples. You have to look at your specific circumstance in your job and see how at risk you are. And you have to look at this for your spouse as well, because if you both work for the same tech company in jobs that are typically the first to go during a layoff, then you might want to consider what it will look like if you're both impacted at the same time. But on the other hand, if you're a doctor and you're married to a nurse that works at a different hospital, then it's very unlikely that you're both going to be laid off at the same time. So I wouldn't be as worried about that. The second tip is your emergency fund. Build your emergency fund according to your financial risk assessment. Emergency fund. If you're a couple and each of you have jobs that are not as secure, then you might want to have an emergency fund at the higher end. Most financial experts recommend 3 to 6 months of expenses as an emergency fund. So if you're out of debt but you're in a job that's not as secure, then you might want to consider building your emergency fund to that higher 6-month level. But if you're a couple with some of the jobs that I talked about that are very secure, then you might not need to have that higher emergency fund and just settle for 3 months. Now, things can still happen and you both get sick at the same time and neither of you can work, but you have to weigh the risk and see that that's probably not going to happen. Either way, an emergency fund is critical to helping you prepare for a recession because you never know what might happen or if you're going to be impacted by layoffs. Now, it's a good idea to keep that money somewhere that is safe, secure, and liquid, like a money market account. You don't want to keep that money somewhere risky like stocks because you might have to pull it out at the exact wrong time when the market's down and end up losing money. Third, pay off debt. When preparing for a recession, it's a great idea to pay off your debt because it's much easier to weather a storm when there's not holes in your house. So for example, according to lendingtree.com, the average car payment for a new car is $700 a month. And according to financebrand.com, the average minimum credit card payment is $110 a month. These are massive payments. It's much easier to take care of your necessities during a recession when you don't have these huge debt payments hanging around your neck. Your emergency fund will last much longer, and you really don't want to have debt collectors hassling you when you're looking for a job and just trying to keep your head above water. So pay off your debt. Now, of course, if you know you're about to be laid off and maybe your employer has already given you notice, then you don't want to pay off debt, but instead focus on building up cash until the storm passes. But again, it comes back to your specific situation and assessing your financial risk. Tip 4 is to add more value in your current role. Add more value. A recession is a great time for companies to get rid of poor performers. Some companies do layoffs based on seniority or last in, first out, but some do it based on performance. You want to make sure you are seen as a high performer so that your company thinks twice before letting you go. So if you're one of those workers who only does the bare minimum, browsing social media, texting your friends, taking 3-hour lunch breaks, and goofing around all day while you're at work, rethink if that's the type of worker you want to be seen as. One quote I always live by is Colossians 3:23. Whatever you're doing, work at it with enthusiasm, as to the Lord and not for people, because you know that you will receive your inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. So for me, this means to never do the bare minimum when it comes to your work or your craft. Do everything with excellence, regardless if you like your boss or not, and regardless if you think you should be getting paid more or whatever other issues you have with your job. As long as you work there, do your best, and in doing so, you're going to gain new skills and a reputation for yourself of excellence. So when the time for layoffs come, you won't be the one impacted, but instead companies will be seeking your skill set out. This doesn't mean let people run all over you. It just means don't let your work ethic be the reason that you're out of a job. And if you really don't like your job and fear you might get laid off, then consider my next tip. Build your skill set. Don't be reactive and wait for a recession to hit. Be proactive. There are so many free resources to learn new skills such as YouTube or LinkedIn courses, and even some universities such as Harvard are offering free online classes. Courses such as programming, data science, business, all of these are in-demand skills that will help you add more value in your current job, find a new job, or help you even build your own successful business. There are so many opportunities out there, and you just have to take advantage of them. Tip number 5 is to reassess your budget. It's important to periodically reassess your budget even in a booming economy, but it's especially important when there's a looming recession. Do you spend too much on fast food? Then reduce the number of times you eat out each week and focus on learning how to make good and healthy foods at home. Spend too much on clothes? Then limit your shopping to only items you really need. And maybe even start shopping at thrift shops instead of spending all your money on name brand luxury items. Make sure you clearly differentiate between wants and needs and cut your discretionary spending as much as you can. Every dollar you reduce on each line item of your budget can instead go towards paying down debt or building an emergency fund to help you get through a recession.